this insecurity was to even Chelsea, my spouse of now, 20 plus years, 25 years, almost 26 years. And once I said it, I felt so good. And then he said to me, well, Tom, the time is up right now, and we'll have to see you next week. No, that sometimes does happen. Like the best moments in my therapy happen at the moment that therapy is almost supposed to be over with, and then I got to try to remember.
I have to go today. Mm-hmm. I know.
I go to my car. I sit in the Tahoe and I verbalize whatever happened at the end there, so I remember it for the next time.
That's a good idea.
I always said appointments should be 3 hours because it's like right. It's 55 minutes in where you hit that spot and you go, oh my God,
it's amazing. Mm-hmm. Although if it was 3 hours, I'd fall asleep too, because there's been moments where I kind of doze a little bit, but. So I'd like to go around the room, and I'm going to give you my example of one of these things. One of the things I've never shared with you guys, and I'm going to share with you right now, is I've always had I have a fear of failure, like I'm sure a lot of other people do. And people will sometimes say, man, you're so successful, and look at you, you've been doing this radio thing for a long time, and you've had success. I never take that for granted, ever. I try not to coast, and it's not because I'm a driven person. It's because I had to be a driven person. When I was young, I got kicked out of the house by my dad when I was a young kid. And it wasn't because he was a bad person. It was because my mom had passed and he had met a new woman, and she kind of wanted to have them go off on their own. And I ended up living with my sisters.
And just as a window, when you say young, you weren't even driving yet.
I was,
right?
15 years old at the time, just almost turning 16. I actually did my driver's test with my sisters, but it was wild because I had no car to drive. I had to beg my dad to help me get a car to drive. And when he left me, to do this, he paid my rent. Like he paid my 1/3 of my rent that my sisters had to pay for the apartment. So he wasn't like a bad dad. And if I needed something, he would be there for me. I just didn't have him. So with that said, people will say to me, how did you get to where you're at right now? Fear. Fear is how I got to this point, because I feared that I would have nowhere to go. People I know have experienced the homelessness, right? We have too much of that. Kirby, I'm making you cry too much. Don't look at me.
You are, sorry.
But my fear and my insecurity was that I was going to fail and I was going to have to call my dad. And as a grown man, I still have that fear. I've got, plenty right now. I'm very, very blessed. But that's what drives me every single day. And there might be somebody that's listening to this right now that maybe has a similar thing. You have a fear of failure. But telling Dennis this in a therapy session made me realize that I never told anybody this. I never told Chelsea that. Chelsea just thought I was a radioaholic. She thought that I loved what I did so much that I thought about it 24/7. And yes, I do love what I do, but I also don't know what else I would do. And I think that is one of the things that kind of drives me. So that's my honesty moment. And if anybody else wants to do one, feel free.
Well, I'll piggyback off of yours because you kind of reminded me of the one that I would tell.
Oh my gosh, that was so loud.
That was such a dad nose blow. You reminded me by talking about therapy, because this came out for me recently in therapy, something that I also had never admitted to anybody before. And you guys know I don't get emotional very often, but it was discussing my family structure and my kids that I realized, and I don't think I've ever said out loud before, that my biggest fear and one of the things I worry most about is being a good dad. And lately, in the last 5 years, as I've been dealing with teenagers, my fear of repeating my dad's mistakes and the things that always bothered me about my growing up and the things my dad did as a parent. And I think it's inevitable at some part of our lives. We all we're doomed to become our parents in a certain way because it's just so ingrained in our brain. But I noticed with my girls specifically that I have a big problem admitting when I'm wrong and apologizing to my girls. And I can do it with strangers. I could do it with coworkers. I can do it with other people in my life. But for some reason, I don't know why in my head, I felt like it would make it difficult to parent, or it would compromise my authority figure as a dad to say that I was wrong. And to realize I'm arguing and double down on the argument because I don't want to go and just tell them you were right, or that was stupid, or I didn't need to say that was unnecessary. And I had such a hard time, and still do, I struggle with being able to just go up to my girls and say, you know what, I was wrong. You're right. I don't need, I've struggled so much with being able to do that. And then when I go back on my own after we have a conversation, I go back and I realize, oh my God, I just did what my dad always did to me. And it was the most frustrating thing. The whole because I said so, because I'm the dad, and shutting down the kids' independence to be able to be their own person and share their feelings or to live how they want to live. And it's just, no, it's my way or the highway. And it was everything I hated about growing up, and I was just projecting it right onto the next generation. And
do they know that you experienced that as a child, and that you're trying to work on this now?
No, wow. Because this only recently came up in therapy this summer, and I realized it, and it was like a big breakthrough moment for me because I never talked it through. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I've been very keen and aware of changing my discussions with my kids, treating them like the adults they are, and respecting their opinions and their alternative viewpoints, and maybe discussing it more and not just putting my foot down. I'm the dad. So I don't know if I would just share the whole breakthrough with them as much as I'm changing the way I parent, and I'm being more aware of it. And I'm so mad at myself for not making that realization 5-10 years ago. But I don't think you realize until you're in that moment how much. That's beautiful, though, that you know that you don't want your kids to experience what you. It's just frustrating because stopping that cycle. My daughters are 18 and 16, and I wish I had discovered it 10 years ago. Before their formative years. But I know awesome. It's never too late every day. But it's just I felt so much better discovering that. And realizing that, because it also brings my relationship to my dad a little closer, realizing I knew what bothered me, and now I don't have to become him. And like I said with my dad, he wasn't a bad guy. He's human. You know what I mean? Nobody taught him. Shannon, you want?
I'm piggybacking off of yours because mine has to do with being a parent. I am so insecure about parenting in public. And what I mean by that is I feel like everybody else is a better mom than me. And I know I'm a good mom, but I get so nervous when I'm in public and my kids are like misbehaving, and I know what I have to do to like offer up a consequence, and I can feel my face get hot, and I know that especially now, you're being judged and shamed, and like I look at my girlfriends and they're such good moms, and I'm constantly, and I know this is bad, comparing myself to them. So that's a big one for me, is when I'm around other people, especially people that I'm not comfortable with or don't know that well, is being a mom. I feel like all eyes are on me, especially now post-divorce, like really all eyes are on me. And I'm definitely insecure about that.
Do you feel like you don't tend to enjoy the moment that you're in, and you look back on it going, I wish I wasn't so fearful about this, that I wish I was able to...
Yeah, because I spend so much time and energy like second-guessing myself and worrying about what others are thinking about me, which is something that I have talked about in therapy for years and years. I mean, my whole life, that's something I've had to work on, is other people's opinion. And it makes it harder when we have the job that we have too, and people know who you are, and then they talk about you, and it's just...
Shannon, I think it's also, a lot of people can identify with it because it's magnified due to social media and everybody comparing their lives to each other. But I can tell you the number one comment I hear from friends of mine who are young moms is how much they love you because you're so real, because you show your open scars on the air and in social media. Like, women who follow you and they see you're not afraid to post your timeouts or your tantrums or things that moms witness every day that other moms will hide and pretend they have this perfect family. And you don't want perfect, you want real.
Yeah.
And they appreciate that you share that.
I catch myself like apologizing for my kids' behavior to people that I don't know that well. And I'm like, they're 6 and 3. They're not perfect kids. Yeah. They're going to be bad. So they're going to be a-holes sometimes. But I need to work on that.
That's one of the things with Chelsea as my wife. She was so great at letting the kids be kids and understanding,
they're going to have their moments.
Amazing mom. I worried so much about people looking at us and, oh my God, they're going to say something or whatever. And Chelsea was like, who cares if they do,